Well, it is a pleasure, and those joining us and those viewing us, those following us on our social media platform, thank you very much. We are an organization that specializes in mental health, research, and communication. In other words, we exist to help people identify those mental issues that causes them to dysfunction. But we also specialize in research because we think whatever we must pour out must be backed up by statistics and evidence, and that is what research does. Then communication, we help it disseminate to the right people that need this information. So thank you very much for those joining us and those following us. This time round, I want to take and share my insight and perception about who in particular needs to seek for a professional. Now, we have many areas of specialization. There are people that qualify in the field of physiotherapy. So when people have issues with their bones, they have issues with their back, they have got an accident and they need a specialist to work on them. They don't go to any other profession. They must look for a physiotherapist because that is his area of training. If you want to be operated, you have a problem with your back, the right people you look for are surgeons, and maybe to be specific, you look for an orthopedic surgeon because this is the person qualified to help in this kind of area. I know many of you watching me, you have your children have issues. When children are sick, the best people trained to manage the issue that our children go through are pediatricians. These are people that have taken time in the training. They've gone through the thick, the ups and downs to make sure that they really understand this generation called the children. Those are people qualified for that area. And there are people who are qualified for legal matters. Those are the lawyers. So the question I want to discuss with you, and you can make your submission through our different onlines, is who in particular needs a therapist? You can call it a counselor. Who in particular needs this service? Who in particular needs such kind of people? I want to lay the following before I get to the category. Number one, anybody on the journey of life, as long as you've had an opportunity, your mother has given birth to you, you are on the journey of life, you need what we call a person that has specialized in a particular area to help you. Because you are on the journey of life, which is not very easy. It has the ups, it has the downs. It has the thick, it has the thin. So anybody on the journey of life needs what we call a specialized person. Call him a clinical psychologist, call it a psychiatric, name it. You need somebody specialized in an area to help you walk through. So somebody on the journey of life needs one. If you are in a leadership position, you need a professional person to talk to you. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're a leader, you could be one, you are a CEO, but you head a company that has over 500, 200 people. But behind these people, there is another generation following them. You are in a position of influence. Everybody is looking up to you for a solution. I can give an example for our president, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. As the traders look for him, the manufacturers are looking for him. Another section of the vendors are looking for him. The politicians are looking for him. The medical doctors are saying this. In other words, he is one person being looked for by everybody in a country, in society. So anybody in the position of leadership, because remember, leadership is not about taking people where they want. John C. Maxwell puts it very clear. You don't take people where they want, you take people where they ought to be. So you have a population of 45 million that have ideas, and it is up to you to roll all these ideas together. Anybody in the position of authority, in the position of leadership, where you have the capacity to determine a number of things for people that you lead, you must have people around you, people that have qualified in the number of areas for guidance, for treatment, for psychotherapy, because there is a lot that happens on a daily basis, which I think the people that can help you deal with this are professionals in the different areas. The third category of people are people that have ambitions. Anybody on the journey of life that has an ambition, you need to find and have somebody around you who is qualified in a particular area. Unless you have no ambition, and I know the destiny for people without ambition is not any other place but the graveyard. But as long as you are on the road of life, you have ambitions, you need somebody who is qualified to take you through the basics, the training. You need one. You need one. You a teacher, you need somebody that has gone ahead of you with experience and exposure. You need one. And lastly, if you are a living thing, you walk, you grow. You need somebody who is professional enough, who has gained experience, gained enthusiasm, gained courage to take you through the issues. So with those 4 foundations, allow me get deep and talk about the different categories of people, and I'll be specific, that needs to see a therapist, that needs to see a counselor, that needs to see a mentor consultant. The first ones are you, the children and the adolescents. When a child comes on earth, there are things we know about children. Our parents may say, I know this about children. There are things we know about them, and that's the fact. Our old mothers, there are things they know about children. But I can also authoritatively tell you there are things you don't know about children. For instance, when children come on earth, there are things we must check for, especially on the very first day. Talk about disorders like autism. There are things we must check for. Now, there are things that you can't understand unless you are a medic. There are things you can't understand unless you are specialized in a particular area of interest. And so because there are things we don't know, there are people that have been trained, there are people that have been exposed to studying children, knowing what they go through, knowing what must happen, at what stage. Stigma and food will tell you when certain things don't appear at a particular stage, it gets up with you. But that's another discussion for another day. In other words, children, when they come, they are people trained to study them. So children is a special category of people that needs to find people that have been trained to study them very critically. I've combined it with the adolescents. When you get to the age of 9, 10, certain things begin to appear. Some are physical. So when the physical, call them things, begin to appear, some children get anxious, others get confused because they don't know what is happening. Things are beginning to appear physical. Things are appearing mentally. Mubongo. So because the children are anxious, they don't know what to do, they don't know why things are happening the way they're happening. Sometimes even parents have ignored their children because they can't talk about the realities with them. There must be people who have been trained to deal with some of these issues. So you probably need a consultant in the areas of adolescent. You need a clinical psychologist. You need a counselor. You need a professional that will talk to the children and bring reality to them and tell them the reason why your body is growing is because of ABCD, and so we must be able to do this and this. That can run them out of anxiety. That will help them to understand what they are going through and be able to heal. That very stage presents what we call expectation. There's what we call individual expectation. The adolescent himself is expecting a number of things. There's parental expectation, but there's also society expectation. Those three expectations, if not well managed by the adolescent, is enough to cause confusion and anxiety in the life of this adolescent. So it is important that even as somebody gets to a stage of confusion, knowing and not knowing what is happening, it's important that we look for people that have qualified, that have been trained, that have the knowledge, that have the skills, that have the courage to confront issues as they are, so that we can have our children transition successfully from one stage to the other. Remember, one of the reasons why we have unproductive adults is failure for us parents to help them manage through these transitional stages. That is one of those proven to be the living factors. Let me talk about the parents. Many times we pretend that we know it all. And the fact is, by virtue of experience, by virtue of exposure, by virtue of age, by virtue of association, we have the information. But I can tell you is that there is an area where you may have no expertise at all, where you may have no control at all. I can tell you, let me use autism as an example. When we give birth to children, sometimes you have no idea of what this disorder is about. And because you are ignorant about it, a child will grow. And by the time you realize this might be autism, it is very late. You can no longer help the person. You may simply have to manage, but you may not be able to do so much. In other words, parents, we must also find ourselves in a place where seeking for professionals like clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists is a requirement, because these are people trained and qualified to understand and read things as they are. Remember, I began by saying, if you look at things the way other people look at them, then you are not in any way different. There are people trained to look at things beyond what others see. There are people that have been trained to understand things beyond the way other people understand them. There are people that have been trained to read people's feeling, thoughts, and behavior beyond what others cannot. These are guys that have been trained and given all the resources to do that. It is important that we find these specialists help us deal and manage the issues that may cause dysfunction in our lives on a daily basis. I want to wind up with the other category of people called those in leadership and key positions. Stress, work-related issues, anxiety is one of those that we have ignored. But let me tell you with facts that the reason why we are losing people at decision-making position, there may be other issues, but the ones I've mentioned, stress is one of those. You are in a position, many people are looking up to you for decisions. You don't know what to do, and a decision that you make has the ability to grow or break the institution. You have internal conflicts inside the organization. You have external. If you are at the level of presidents, you have decisions to make internally and you have decisions to make externally. You have people to appease, but there are also those that if you make a decision, it will make them unhappy. The army needs you for intervention. The traders need you for intervention. The doctors need you to intervene in an issue. Everybody is crying to you for help. So there must be people around you that will help you deal with some of these issues. In other words, as I conclude, who needs a clinical psychologist, who needs a trained profession, anybody in the leadership position, anybody on the journey of life, anybody with ambitions needs to find people who are qualified to talk about, help them manage. Remember, we are talking about thoughts, we are talking about feelings, and we are talking about behavior. Thank you very much. This is how I think about life. And I have come to discover that when I have issues in the educational career, I don't look for a doctor, I look for an educationist. If I have issues in the medical profession, I don't run to a lawyer, I must run to a medic. If I need legal assistance, I don't run to a clinical psychologist, I run to the lawyer. If I need to consult on matters of business, I don't run to other people. I'll run to the Ochichis of Enterprise Uganda, because these are the qualified professionals. In other words, when you are amidst a challenge, a trouble, a tribulation, a crisis, one of the things that will help you heal is you look for those qualified in a particular area. That is fundamentally the beginning of your healing. Look for somebody qualified, somebody trained, somebody with knowledge, somebody with wisdom, somebody with courage, somebody with enthusiasm, somebody that has amassed experience in that particular area to help you.